This is the Christian Circle podcast, and you're listening to Pamela Fernandez, where we have conversations about Christian living. Here's the show. Welcome to a new episode of the Christian Circle podcast. Today we have a new guest, Dr. Dan Guernsey, who's going to talk to us about Catholic educational leadership. So, Dan, tell us a little bit about yourself and your ministry.
Great. Well, I'm an assistant professor here at Ave Maria University, and I've been with Ave Maria for about 25 years, doing all sorts of stuff in the K-20 environment. And I also, as well as running their master's degree in Catholic educational leadership, I also am a senior fellow at the Cardinal Newman Society, which promotes and defends faithful Catholic education. So I've got a couple of different roles that I play, but I'm very excited to bring my experience as a principal and as a scholar together to help Christian and Catholic schools in developing the leaders that they need.
Yeah. Now, I actually found you on the Cardinal Newman Society website, and you had written an article about this and the call to lead. From what I gather in your article, it talks about Catholic educational leadership being more than just an administrative job. This is a vocation. So we are called in service, and this is more than just being a professional. So currently, the leaders who are in Catholic school have this ongoing tension, the practicalities of
Hmm.
budgets, staffing, the curriculum, and the spiritual vocation of leadership. How do they balance the two of these between themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we did with Cardinal Newman is in trying to assist Catholic schools is we go back to what the tradition of the Catholic Church and Christianity has taught us about schools and leadership. And so with my colleague, Dr. Denise Donahue, we reviewed as much literature as we could get our hands on, and then tried to present it in a way to help principals and Catholic leaders or Christian leaders answer these questions. The critical thing is to remember that we're part of a mission, and that mission is one of evangelization in the church, right? The Catholic schools, Christian schools are an outreach of the church's mission to go make disciples of all nations.
Mm.
So keeping that mission forefront is what can help get through all of the stress that comes through the daily operation of a school. Just operating a school is a Herculean task.
Mm.
And there are many, anyone who wants to operate a school, a public school in particular, has to go through extensive training and get a license, because there's just a lot of stuff that you need to be able to do to manage a school. It is a hothouse of emotions and human development and all sorts of wonderful things. But for the Christian leader, there's a whole nother aspect of what we're trying to do that transcends the craziness and delight of operating a school. So what we try to do is bring those things together to not only do the practical stuff that principals need to do to keep a successful school operation going, but to do the mission-driven stuff, which is why are we doing this? And it is to bring souls to Christ and to assist in the development of the common good, the best possible outcome we can have in this vale of tears here below. So that's our mission, is to run these incredible, not just complex schools, but Christian schools with this whole other development.
In order to live this vocation more fully, what personally, I guess you might have a lot of experience with this, given that you've been in this for a long time. What practices or supports can leaders inculcate or grow within themselves so that they can live this vocation more fully?
Good. The first again is remembering always it's a vocation, because like as anything, it's like being a parent. We have a vocation as a parent, but then the kids start screaming and the tub is leaking and the phone is ringing and dinner is burning. All of this other stuff comes up. So just keeping the idea when the things get tough, that it's a vocation, and with that vocation comes grace. And in the Catholic tradition, we access those graces particularly with the sacraments and a sacramental view of reality. So keeping that in mind is essential. And the church is very specific with its leaders, right? The bishops have thought about this as well, and the bishops of the United States have said it's critical that we form leaders in the spiritual life and that they be prepared for it. So we shouldn't just show up as Christian leaders and expect everything to be okay. We really have to in humility, turn ourselves back over to Christ and to make ourselves available to the promptings of the Holy Spirit. So being able even to have some ability to discern spirits
Mm,
is very important for the Christian leader because we're working in an environment that is the church in action.
mm,
Um, the Catholic Church is very clear that its Catholic schools are ministries of the church. They're not just, that's not just a brand marketing. It's you're involved in
mm,
this work of the church, and as such, you could expect for the confusion of Satan and his minions to come our way as well. So the church wants its leaders to be trained in the spiritual life and in the discernment of spirits. And that's one of the things we do here in our program at Ave Maria. We're one of the few programs that's very explicit about this responsibility that the bishops have placed upon us. So we do actual classes
mm.
in spirituality moved into our leadership program. So it's got to be deliberate and it's got to be as serious as the work in front of us.
Mhm. And I think this is as would be for any vocation, right? That
Mhm.
you would have a deeply spiritual life so that you can live your vocation better.
Indeed, indeed. And the challenge when one puts oneself forward as a leader, and hopefully one has experienced the call to leadership, there's an additional responsibility because you're making decisions for a community and you're making decisions that are directly impacting people's lives and potentially even, obviously their supernatural destiny is in the hands of God,
Mm,
but you're mucking around in some very deep waters. And so having that sense and having your spiritual wits about you is very important because you're leading an organization, you're leading in um, a group of people towards a common goal, and that goal in a Catholic or Christian school is the goal of fullness of life in Christ. So yes, there's a vocation there, but it's one of elevated impact, elevated insofar as the number of people directly impacted, not in importance. What the work that a mother does with her child is arguably as important as the work a principal does with her school.
okay. So I guess this feeds into our next question, which is, the importance of spiritual formation. And
Mhm.
you did mention a few things there. And when I wrote this, I think I asked you in what ways are schools and dioceses providing spiritual formation for its administrators and leaders? But I think I would actually ask you, what can they provide for the spiritual formation of their administrators and leaders?
The first is an honest discussion about why such formation is necessary.
Mm,
Again, unfortunately what we do in the bureaucratic schools, Catholic school system is we follow the common bureaucracy, which is
mm,
we make our principals get licenses and training, which often is no different than the public schools. And
yeah.
again, 80% of what we're doing has some similarities with the public schools, but that 20% makes all the difference. Or
Mm,
and sometimes what we do is we bring in, we're so desperate for leaders or principals that we
mm,
look at our brothers and sisters who got experience in running schools and we bring them into our schools, hoping we can benefit from that experience,
mm,
which is true. But what we do is so much more and so much deeper. So the first thing is to get this very distinct sense from our bishops and superintendents about this ecclesial vocation, that we are a minister of the church, and therefore, what are we doing? So we get our teacher's license or our principal's license to say we're approved by the state, which actually we don't have to do, but
oh,
we typically do that on our own. That's a self-imposed thing. The states don't require that. But what we need to do is have that ministerial, spiritual seriousness about us as well. And that requires more training and additional training, and actually more important training than just to make sure you know how to balance a budget and stay out of a civil lawsuit and hire and fire people.
mhm. What are these barriers that are there to implementing this deeper spiritual formation? Because I know like from personal experience, I know a lot of teachers. We have a lot of Catholic people who are teaching, and yet we seem to have a shortage of spiritual administrators, people who
Mhm.
are in schools who can administrate, principals. And like you said, then we run across and try and find help elsewhere. So
Mhm.
what's the barrier and how can we overcome this?
I think deliberate exercise and formation of the leaders in the spiritual realm. And again, sometimes again, I've been a principal for many years. Most of my 16 or 18 years as a principal has been in the diocesan, context. So I've been to the meetings, I've been to the trainings, and
Mm,
sometimes we principals get a little bit jaded
mm,
and maybe even a little bit proud and just want to say, I'm too busy to get the spiritual training. You don't understand. I don't have a teacher for my third grade class today, and my phones are blowing up. I don't have time for this. So, really, it's taking that time apart for retreats and
mm,
for the attention of the bishops and our pastors, and taking the time out to celebrate the sacraments together in the Catholic tradition, having Mass together as leaders. That is rarer than you might think.
oh,
um, and so just getting back to that, the nuts and bolts of that. And part of it is as well is the leaders being trained to see their specific tasks. The catechetical leader of your school, it's the principal's responsibility to provide the catechesis for the faculty members. But a principal may feel woefully unprepared for that because he or she is not a theologian,
mm,
or he or she has spent the bulk of her career in public schools and just happens to be a Catholic who's
mm,
being invited back now to run a Catholic school. How can I catechetically inform? Well, part of it is realizing that that's my mission, and then in humility saying, I'm not prepared to catechetically form my teachers, but I'm going to spend the money and the time to bring in the best catechists I can find
mm,
to do that. The other is to make sure that they are supposed to be forming a distinctively Christian community with the
mm,
parents and the teachers. And how do you do that? There are techniques you can use and energies you can spend to do that. But again, if you're not coming in with that background, you can just not know what you don't know. So again, I
mm,
would say going back to knowing what am I supposed to be doing to promote the spiritual good of this community, and if I can't do it, how do I bring things into this? So hopefully our pastors
mm,
can come back directly into our schools and be that light for us for where our schools, our administrators are a little bit thin in catechesis or formation or offering retreats, but that's something that we just need to do.
mhm. So let's say somebody wants to have a professional formation program for Catholic educational leaders, which includes teachers, principals, everybody in schools, or even colleges or universities. What should this program include so that it ensures both fidelity to the church teaching and effective leadership at the same time?
Well, I would start with the sacramental environment.
Hmm.
So I would, my experience, what I would do as a principal is I would start the school year, or I would start a retreat with time and silence in Eucharistic adoration.
Hmm.
So we believe that God is present, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the sacrament. So having the faculty gather in silence to let Jesus speak to them through this sacramental grace, and just rest in his presence. Because so often what we do with our teachers is we start with talking at them, and they've got a million things going through their minds, and they're
Yeah.
just like so getting them into a place of silence at the feet of the master is important, and then getting them to confession, like giving them
Hmm.
the chance to put themselves right with the Lord is
Hmm.
absolutely essential. And then, like I said, having Mass together. So
Hmm.
starting with these very simple, concrete things. But again, if we are the church and the school is an element of the church in practice, going back to our core is a good place to start. And then from there, we can build out in humility and in doing things like an examination of conscience to how are we doing as Catholic leaders? And those are tough questions. Through the Cardinal Newman, we've developed a series of questions. Experts can ask the teachers and the board members and the faculty members can ask of themselves is, are we doing what our vocation is to do? What are we supposed to be doing as a
Hmm.
Catholic school? What are those specific things that are being asked of us? Do we know what they are? And once we know what they are, and again, the resources that we've developed from the Cardinal Newman can help with this, then we can ask those questions and have like an examination of conscience to how we're doing as a school. And the big picture is there. We're as a Catholic school or Christian school, we're supposed to be working for the salvation of our students and the common good. We're supposed to be forming a real, authentic, ecclesial Christian community where the children encounter Christ in their relationships with us and each other and the sacraments. We're supposed to be praying with our children
Mhm.
and bringing them and have reverent masses. We're supposed to be integrating the mind, body, and spirit of that child, not just their minds over here and their spirits over here, but all together at once. And we're supposed to be giving a Catholic worldview, a Catholic articulation, the Catholic genius, a Catholic understanding of what's before us, whether it's math, science, history, literature. Are we doing these things? How well are we doing them? So it's really a big, big world that we're working. It's a big can of worms that we have to do, but piece by piece, day by day,
Mhm.
understanding our mission and then evaluating ourselves and coming to the foot of Christ and saying, Lord, how are we doing? How can I do better? What do you want of us in this community of the church that is our little school gathered before you is a place to start. So the leaders are the ones who make this happen, right? They're the ones who bring the individuals together towards achieving this common goal, but they have to know what that goal is. And
Mhm.
then they have to know who's in front of them. And then they have to create an environment where hearts and minds are open to moving forward in this direction.
Okay. So I think I went to convent school in the beginning and then later on to public school. But I remember in convent school, the nuns always have, they have regular mass.
Mhm.
They have a special period where they make you write down and learn hymns. And so every time the students had to participate in something that was spiritual, whether it was mass, whether it was this hymns, whether it was morning prayer, the teachers who are supervising also have to be involved with this. And so as a result, the entire school is involved in sacramental life. And
Yes,
and and I think that's a good way of looking at it if we can incorporate that into our school life,
yes.
just in convents or schools run by priests, but in other schools as well.
Amen. Amen. And again, what it is, it's the whole community gathering together, and it starts with the teachers.
Mm,
The teachers are the stable formators. The kids both come and go in and out of the school, and the kids, our students, change around us, right? Just as they grow and mature, and that's usually it's forward, sometimes it's back, but it's the teachers as a spiritual community of Christian witnesses which forms the core, as you pointed out in your convent school. So the leader has to be trained to
mm,
gather those teachers together and support them and bring them forward. So that's where the energy needs to lie. And again, you're a school leader as a principal, so you have to be trained to make sure that you're accomplishing the academic goals of the school. You can't just blow off tests. You can't just blow off coursework. You can't. It's not just a catechetical program our kids are going to. They're going to a rigorous academic school. So there is so much to balance, but the leader has to make sure that we're accomplishing the mission and not letting something else, even academics, take precedence. So one of the challenge, most of the saints, Saint Ignatius, Don Bosco, they
mm,
all had they all said daily mass for the
yeah,
students is absolutely essential. The great saints have said this. But in the modern school, you might get a teacher or a community saying, we don't have time to do daily
yeah,
mass, right? Okay, I get that, but you certainly have time to do weekly mass.
yeah.
Um, and by the way, I don't even accept that daily mass is not possible. We've been blessed in the schools I've been involved with to have daily mass. So there is time to give God the pride of time,
Mm,
and it does have an effect. So again, you're right. Is the leader has to see these things and negotiate this, and then make it happen against the challenges which might come to fulfilling the mission. And in Catholic education, it's complex. We have to be a school. We have to teach math and science and history and literature, but we also have to have the sacraments. We have to have common prayer life. And one of the critical things for a leader to see, right, is when we do a retreat, that's not a day off for the kids who are into the school mission. It is essential to the school mission. Having school retreats and having field days is absolutely critical to forming the ecclesial community, the bonds between teachers and students and teachers with each other. And all of it bonding together is central to our mission. So we do these days of fun and these days of retreat and these days of prayer, but they're not optional days. They're at the heart of our mission. So a leader has to see that and point it out so that the body as a whole will be held together. So, as Thomas Aquinas, you know, noted, right? What does a leader do? A leader brings unity and peace. And so those are the main things that the leaders, that the Catholic school or Christian school principal is trying to do in the day-to-day affairs, achieving the mission given by the church and given by Christ, but then doing that with unity and peace and stability. That's a tall order. And so that needs, again, that needs time and training. Sometimes people have a natural knack to it, but
Mm.
really to accomplish these things is quite a challenge. But if there's any leaders in there who are interested, I'd be happy to help or speak to you to bring you along this way. I don't claim to be perfect, but I do claim to have thought about it for a while and
Yeah.
spent many years making many mistakes.
So I know you identified time as a very precious resource,
Hmm.
but money is another issue as well. So if these programs were like if there was professional formation program for our Catholic leaders, how can these be made available, accessible, especially dioceses with few resources? Like I know here in Rhode Island where I live, we had three Catholic schools, now there's just one. And
Hmm.
so, whereas you compare other areas, like you go to a place like India, the Salesians, the Jesuits, the schools are bursting. Like
Hmm.
everybody, including non-Christians, want to go to Catholic schools.
Yeah.
So how do we scale up with these resources being so few in especially the dioceses which are struggling?
Great, good question. And yes, it was my pleasure as a younger man. I was a teacher in Madras or Chennai, India, for a while at a Salesian school. When you mentioned
Okay.
that, it made my heart smile thinking back to those beautiful days. So yes, on the question of finance, which is a real thing, the challenge is that this is a little bit deep inside baseball, but um, because money is an issue, sometimes Catholic schools try to tap into government funds to do their training and development because the government does supply Catholic schools with what are called title funds that we can use for professional development. So most Catholic schools have several $1,000s or multiple thousands of dollars to spend on development, but because it's government funding, they won't let the Catholic schools bring religion into it. So what we do is we have these gatherings for Catholic education and we do these professional developments, but they're secular because we're using secular funds. We have to bite the bullet and say this is central to our mission. And
Mm,
so we are going to release the funding, or we need the help of our pastors and our bishops to go to our donors
mm,
with this holistic vision for Catholic education and say, folks, I need your help.
yeah.
We need to feed the teachers. We need to make sure that they are spiritually robust because the challenges facing our children today are immense.
Mm,
And we need not just parents, but fully put together on fire teachers who are well grounded in a spiritually rich places so that they too can serve as witnesses to our students who are floundering around
mm,
in liquid modernity and looking for a place to stand. And so this is again where we need to put our money where our mouth is and make it happen. So there are resources available, but as I said, sometimes it's just making the time and just saying, okay, yes, there's a new reading program that we could all spend a day getting training on to raise our reading scores, perhaps.
mm,
But why are we here in the first place? And let's make sure that we're giving enough time to that as well. And again, as I said, there are, again, the reason we put the call to lead together, we have another work that Dr. Donahue and I did with Cardinal Newman called the Call to Teach, in which we look at the vocation of a teacher. And there are lots of free resources out there, such as that schools can tap into. You just get a bunch of good Christian educators together, have them spend some time in front of the Lord, and give them time to sit around and talk and bare their hearts. It doesn't necessarily cost an awful lot.
Mm.
It's a matter of putting the vision in front and letting them go and bringing out the best in the people who are serving our kids.
So, if there are Catholic education leaders, how do they make sure that their curriculum choices, the staff they hire, the culture of the school, all the policies actually align with this mission that we have?
Well, again, that's one of the things we try to do through Cardinal Lumen. So one of the other things we worked on, Dr. Donahue and I, was at the Catholic curriculum standards,
Mm.
which is what are the additional, in addition to the secular standards that we have for math and science and literature and history, what are the particular things Catholic schools need to be doing? So we put that together, and all the stuff from Cardinal Newman is free. Just go to the Cardinal Newman website, and you can find these free resources. Thanks to our donors, because we've said this is our priority, and they said yes, we'll help you do these things for free for our educators. So I think getting in mind with the idea is you don't to the leaders out there, the Catholic or Christian leaders, you don't have to make this stuff up on your own. The church has already provided the guidance. Look at
Mhm.
the church documents. Again, we've distilled some of those down in Cardinal Newman, but you can go anywhere you want. Cardinal Miller has some. Archbishop Miller has some great things called the benchmarks of Catholic schools, which are helpful. So there's lots of free resources out there. It's just knowing to look for them. But I get the greatest resource is putting those faculty members who love each other, if they don't love each other, helping them to love each other more by developing trust and developing relationships. That in itself is part of what we do, because it's a real ecclesial community every time that school bell rings.
Mhm. So, are there any practices that you've seen where, the identity is very strong, or where you feel that the Catholic identity is weakened or compromised?
Yes, 100%. There are lots of good schools, and there are more and more dioceses coming on boards, looking at how can we increase our Catholic identity. So I think, I went to school in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, things, and maybe in the early 90s. Things are pretty loose and loose in Catholic schools. I think there's a real hunger now and a lot more resources coming together. So there's groups such as the Institute for Catholic Liberal Education, ICLE, which is doing great work helping schools recover their Catholic identities and Catholic focus. The Chesterton Schools Network has over 70 schools around the world now. They're doing great work. The John Henry Newman Institute is offering free resources to help Catholic schools. So there's a lot out there right
Mhm.
now. There's a lot of generous donors who are stepping forward. They see the crisis that our kids are
Yeah.
going through, and they're saying, what can we do to help? And a great way to help is getting a solid Catholic school which provides a community of committed Christians surrounding these children to let them know life is amazing. The world that God created is full of wonder and meaning and goodness. So to counteract the toxicity that they're getting in their online exposure, their cultural exposures, I mean, all that's been found wanting. It's failed. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Uh, we've got um, we've got just such a great alternative to offer. And when you get a whole community of adults and kids celebrating and playing together and learning together and excited together, that's just a recipe for success and an oasis in a world which is just lost. But the universe isn't lost, right? God's not lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
The church isn't lost. I mean, parts of it sometimes get a little confused, but I mean, the body of Christ, the mystical body of Christ, with its bodies in heaven and in purgatory on earth, we're all still here. So we just need to tap into that resource that we've been given by the Blessed Trinity and make it happen. Right? They're
Mhm.
His children first.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in what ways can, other people, other vocations, there are so many people doing other work in the church. How can
Yeah.
all of these people, church authorities, better support the teachers, the principals, the professors who are all doing this work, this church's mission in schools.
Great. And yes, because I work with principals all the time, and I get the I would say give your principal a break. When they say something, assume the best, and then a positive word and a positive prayer for any pastors or people who are going through. And we do need to give a shout out to our great homeschooling communities too as well.
Yes. Yeah.
There is such heroic work being done in those Catholic homeschools, and yeah, there's micro schools opening and hybrid schools opening. So again, those who are seeking to bring the children to our Lord, to bring their hearts and their minds to Him, to unite faith and reason, wherever these efforts are happening, it's a good thing. And whenever, I sometimes joke, wherever, as somebody has said, wherever two or more, are gathered, there'll be a fight. So, you know, your principal's job is to be a peacemaker and a relationship manager, and that's sometimes not easy. So when you can bring them a little peace and a little bit of relationship healing to your leaders, do that for them, because that's kind of what they're doing in the background for you, and not sometimes people don't see that. And the leadership is a great ministry, but it does involve a lot of hidden sacrifices, which is a good thing, right? Because that's the way, if it's our vocation, that's the way we're going to get to heaven if we're a leader, and sometimes that involves suffering. But anything we can do as those who benefit from a good leader in support is always appreciated by those leaders.
Okay. And lastly, I think I want to ask this question, even though I probably didn't send it across. If there are, from your vast amount of experience, there are currently teachers, educators, if they're listening and they're struggling, we have generations of children, and we know our Catholic population in churches is dwindling, especially among our youth currently. We know what's happening in the news right now. What would be your advice, the one takeaway piece of advice that you would give them?
Jesus wins, right? Jesus won. The battle is won. So that's the piece of advice. This what we don't need to measure success, as Mother
Mm,
Teresa said, right? It's just faithfulness. So
yeah.
it is hard to see. But on the other hand, part of the romance of being a leader, right, is being, what if I was there at the foot of the cross? What if I was there when Jesus was being scourged? What if I was there when the apostles were being slaughtered? That courage to say, I will keep the faith, and
Mm,
I will trust the Lord
mm,
in these environments, because in ways, Jesus is still being crucified today, and there are people still being martyred, and seeing one's child or one's student um, lost is extremely painful.
mm,
But again, so what are we going to do about it? And what we're going to do about it is pick up the banner of Christ, knowing He won. The battle's not over in the temporal realm that we're going through, and we get the privilege of fighting it. But we're gonna keep the faith. I'm gonna keep the faith amid the crisis. So yes, there's darkness, no doubt, but we know that there's so much. We know that, right? We know how the story ends, and it's so good.
yeah.
It's so good. So that's what I would say is just keeping that perspective as a leader, that we're serving the Lord in a mission that's His, and the success is His, not ours.
Great. That's perfect. So, Dan, if people want to find you online or get in touch with you, or even your programs at Cardinal Newman, where can they find you online?
I think using the easiest address is my Ave Maria address, which is my name, Dan.Guernsey at avemaria.edu. That's DAN.GUERNSEY at avemaria.edu. And then I can hook them up to any of the other resources.
Okay, great. So it was nice listening about all your experiences and all your wisdom about Catholic education leadership. I wish you and your ministry all the very best.
Thank you so much.